Hello and welcome to Unbind with Bindable. I'm Bill Sunnison, CEO and co-founder of Bindable, and I'm excited to host my very first episode of Unbind alongside today's guest, Ellen Carney, who's the Principal Analyst of Insurance and eBusiness and Channel Strategies at Forrester. In her role, Ellen is focused on researching the technology investments of financial firms. Today, we plan on talking about how insurers should think about leveraging the right technology to keep up with the evolving industry landscape. Welcome, Ellen. Such a pleasure and privilege to have you as our guest today.
Bill, thank you so much for having me. And, we go so far back, we've known each other for so long. I can't believe we waited this long to do this together.
I know this is a real privilege for me to have you on. We've always have great conversations, and I've got so much admiration for what you do and what you've done for our industry. So it's just great to have a conversation in this capacity. So thanks again for the time today.
Oh, my pleasure.
Ellen, you've got a great background. Before we get started today, would you mind telling the listeners a little bit about your career and how you got to Forrester?
Well, Bill, I'm in the coolest job on the planet. I can't tell you how cool it is to be an analyst covering the insurance industry. But like a lot of analysts, it's been an accidental career. No one actually sets forth and say, "I want to be an analyst when I grow up." Likewise, no one ever says, "I want to be in insurance when they grow up." Right? That's kind of how it works. But I had the opportunity to come to Forrester. I had been an analyst at Gartner, and I had covered totally different space, network and telecom. And I got to Forrester and I was covering basically technology marketing. How do you sell technology to buyers?
Mhm.
And I had to declare a minor. And the minor I declared was I'll cover financial services as well. And I happened to be at a analyst conference and I got the best advice of my career from Donna Rubin, who worked for Sun Microsystems. She says, don't cover banking, don't cover cap markets, cover insurance. No one covers that. And it was like, okay, this is really cool. And so over the course of 17 years, I've, built my chops in insurance, realized how awesome the industry is, takes care of people. It's a noble profession. Um, and it's a very relationship oriented business, way different than the kind of transactional business of banking or wealth management and that sort of thing. So yes, it's a little bit of a checkered employment history, but that's how I ended up here. And I'm very blessed to have, met everybody that I've met in insurance and gotten the opportunity to do this.
Oh, that's terrific. I wouldn't call it checkered. I'd call it a zigzag. Careers are zigzags, right? But you said something that's really important. I think we've always agreed on this, Alan. This is a very noble industry,
Yeah.
right? We help people at the worst moments of their lives, and we're there to help, right? So
Yeah.
it's great that that's how you approach it. Um, at Forrester, you've been involved in the research on the U.S. Financial Services Customer Trust Index rankings,
Yeah.
which I think your most recent report was last fall. Um, what were those results? How do insurers rank?
Two things, customer experience and trust. We have two indexes, Bill. So we have the customer experience index, which we've been doing a really long time, 2016 for auto and home in the US. Then we have the trust index, and we've been doing that for 2 years. And they're related. And obviously, the outcome of both great customer experience and trust in the insurance company both drive revenue. But doesn't mean you have great customer experience, doesn't mean that the customers trust you to the same degree. So last year, 2023, the customer experience index was basically flat. We didn't see tremendous growth up or down in terms of how people felt from a customer experience standpoint. No surprise, who's been the leader in customer experience since 2016? USAA. They might bounce around a little bit, but they have, been the leaders since we've been doing the customer experience index for U.S. auto and home. Likewise, they've been the leaders in the 2 years we've done the trust index. But there's a little bit of a gap between trust and CX. So just to kind of give you a sense, 36% of USAA members call themselves, wait for this, Bill, devotees, really important in terms of
Wow.
how loyal they feel towards USAA. That's versus 26% of our respondents across the whole auto and home customer experience index. So customer experience is all about two components here: emotion, ease, and effectiveness. How do we feel about the experience? Does the insurance company do a good job solving our problem, and how easy was it to work with? And that, of course, drives loyalty. The degree to which they keep customers, the degree to which we advocate for them, we'll refer them, and the degree to which we'll buy more stuff from them. We see the same sort of thing around trust, Bill. Trust, some of the behaviors that drive it, on the part of the insurance companies, they're dependable. They're by our side when we need them. They're empathetic, kind of going back to that same emotional characteristic that we see in customer experience. And they're also, wait for this one, accountable.
Huh.
So, and of course, we're accountable to a very high degree in the insurance industry because we're regulated. So, we see some differences here. We'll be repeating the customer experience index, and in fact, we already have it for 2024. So you'll be seeing that in the not too distant future. Likewise for the trust index as well, and hopefully the two will get a little closer together.
That's terrific. It's interesting, Ellen. Early in my careers, I used to call on a lot of affinity groups, and
Yes.
the number of times that I was talking to an affinity group about an auto insurance or auto and home insurance program for their members, the person I'd be speaking with would say, "This sounds like a great benefit for my members. I don't need it because I'm with USAA, but my members might like it."
Yeah.
So it was not that person wasn't even open to thinking about a different company. So
Yeah, absolutely. It's they do a wonderful job retaining their customers, and again, it's that kind of mission culture at USAA, standing by the side of their members.
yep, trust is it's interesting. There, where you and I have mutual interest in alternative distribution, right? So,
Yes.
um, what do you think, given kind of the how insurance companies were rated? I mean, what do you think the opportunity is for trusted non-insurance brands in the insurance space? And I say trusted because there's a lot of non-insurance brands that may
Oh
or may
yeah.
not have tried insurance, but trusted brands, what do you think the opportunity is for them? Do you think consumers would respond favorably to insurance offers from those types of brands?
Oh, yes. Well, and it was a great question, Bill, because one of the things that actually stands out for insurance organizations are consumers who have high trust in a particular brand. They're much more likely to trust, affiliations with that particular brand. Let me just give you an idea of how big the difference is. So, consumers that have high trust in a brand, 77% of them said, "I would trust other companies that affiliate with that firm."
Huh.
Versus those that have low trust, it's only 31%. So there is a big difference between, I trust my insurance carrier, and therefore I would trust if it was, the insurer that was, behind the scenes at an embedded insurance experience, whether it was with an automotive, a home goods store, for instance. Those are some of the ones that we're thinking of, a mortgage company, that sort of thing. So, affiliated firms can draft behind the trust that insurance organizations have built up with their customers.
And in terms of that's right on. I mean, in terms of the customer experience, how much do they commingle? I mean, if there's a trusted brand that has a lousy customer experience or a really good customer experience with maybe not as trustworthy a brand, does that make a really big difference?
Well, a couple of things. The number one driver for trust in insurance is dependability. That you're there, when the customer needs you, just as you had talked, we're there, when, in the worst moments of customers' life. So being dependable, being, doing what you're saying you're going to do, that's number one for insurance organizations. Number two is empathy. So, and empathy is so closely tied with customer experience, because the number one driver of customer experience is the emotion at the conclusion of the transaction or the process, whatever it happens to be. So the two of them, are so important together. And I think, if we can think about that from the perspective of, how do our partners, how do we deliver that? How do our distributors do that as well? Are going to be really important. Now, of course, that's going to be a challenge for these kind of non-insurance brands, right? Because we're a relationship business. Some
Yeah.
of these other brands are transactional.
Yeah. And it's interesting. So when you think about that's empathy, and again, that's core to what we do, right? That's our
Yeah,
business. So if a brand, you're saying if a brand has demonstrated empathy in some other way, maybe like a AAA, right? They've
yeah,
been there when you needed to have your car towed when you're out in the freezing cold. Now they're one of the biggest, sellers of insurance in the country, right? Maybe
exactly.
yeah, that's really interesting. And in terms of trust, I mean, we've talked about insurtech and the insurtech movement over the years. And in the early days of the insurtech movement, there was a lot of people that said the independent agent's going away, right? That they're going to replace independent agents, their technologies, whatever it is. It seems though that independent agents are thriving. They continue
Hmm.
to do well. How do you think about trust and an independent agent? And secondly, how do you think about that same trust in hybrid models where there might be this really dynamite digital experience, but at the end of the experience,
Yeah.
there's a human being that kind of helps. How do you think about that? And what does the research show?
Well, let me take a step back and tell you one of the things that was so striking in 2023 about the questions that insurance companies asked Forrester. And one of the things, and I think you and I talked a little bit about it back in December when you came and visited me in Cambridge, is the fact that we saw a huge over index, something we have never seen on lead generation, marketing, sales and distribution in insurance. And of course, just what had gone on with, renewals and unhappy customers in our hard rate market, it became, really important to understand, how do we capture that customer interest and that sort of thing. So, what we rely on in the business of insurance is, kind of the human element of it. An agent that's going to kind of walk you through, help you pick the right coverage. Even Bill, I think I mentioned this to you back in December. Gen Zs, 24% of Gen Zs here in the US, the first true digital native generation, they want to talk to an agent on a mobile app. That's what they're doing. So,
Yeah,
help me navigate this process. And yes, we had the allure of lemonade and the 3-second claim and all that kind of stuff. And, we spent a lot of time talking people off the ledge about the 3-second claim. Well, there's fast and there's good. And the
yeah,
good part goes back to what we had talked about, that you're dealing with a human that's going to be empathetic. And, even Bill, I got to tell you, we're seeing some crazy stuff with Gen AI and some of these Gen AI driven chatbots. We're so sorry about, your loss and that the airbags deployed in your car. It's like, oh my God, what kind of crazy thing is that?
yeah,
you know,
yeah. That's incredible.
so, it just, it's maybe someone doesn't want to be reminded of that unpleasant event, that the airbags deployed in their
Yeah,
cars. But, I think that's part of the problem is that, uh, humans can watch for the signals, they read cues, and that's the beauty of an agent, if they're hitting it or they're missing it in terms of the conversation that they're having with clients. And I think that's so important for how we think about moving forward,
absolutely. And removing, as you said, and I think we talked about it a little bit in December, the digital experiences, as you said, can be clunky, right? And I think
Yeah,
consumers sometimes don't know the difference between an aggregator and a digital agency, right? And an
that's right.
aggregator is selling your information, right? Whereas digital agency is providing that personal support during the end of the
Exactly.
call. And
Yeah.
where do you think if you had to look out a few years, what do you think do you think that's going to stay the same with the agents? What do you think the agents have to do to continue to play as important role in terms of technology?
Well, I think you used the perfect term just a minute ago, the digital agent. The agency itself has to be as digital as what we're seeing for direct to consumer, insurance carriers. So, you see smart agencies, with, terrific uh, uh, contact center capabilities, CRM embedded in it, so they know who they're talking to. They have a good sense of the history of the client, things like that. But also, we're seeing, you got to have a mobile app. You got to have, bi-directional texting capabilities. You got to meet as an agency, where the customer is in their, their digital journeys or their digital expectations.
Yep.
And I didn't cover it very well, but basically what we're seeing is um, we want to have a terrific omni-channel experience. So an agent can pick up where you left off in digital, vice versa, and so it becomes seamless, easy for the customer, minimal number of clicks, things like that are going to simplify their journey, make it more effective, and leave them feeling good at the conclusion of it.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. So if you step, I mean, Forrester does a lot of work in lots of different industries, and you know, outside of insurance, what industries do you think has really got it right? I mean, any thoughts on that?
Well, what we see, especially financial services, banking industry does a really good job in terms of some of the digital capabilities. But, it's a different engagement model, right? Because people are checking their balances. I mean, we see that in a wealth management situation. Right now, everyone is checking what's going on with their 401ks every day and seeing how happy they are, and how they just keep going up and up and up. So we have a kind of episodic engagement model here in insurance. The only time people are kind of engaged with us is when they have to pay a bill, or they have a question about their policy, or if they have a claim. Very
Yep.
different with your credit cards, very different with your bank. You're just much more attuned to checking a mobile app and seeing what's going on with your money and your credit card balances.
Yep.
So
And a lot of
um,
those industries, I mean, just in the theme of digital transformation, right? It's been a buzz term or word for a long time, and I think some of these other industries were transforming digitally far before us, right?
yeah.
Um,
And when you kind of think about who's land kind of usually the top of the heap, hard to believe, Chewy, sending
yeah,
out
yeah,
stuff for your pets, and they, put in handwritten notes. If you've lost your pet, they'll, they won't charge you for that month's subscription and things like that. They do a wonderful job with conveying that empathy and, again, that personal touch to a
yeah.
pet owner in a very digital business.
Yep. Yeah, they do a great job, and it's interesting because we think about insurance as empathetic and noble, right? But our customers don't, right?
Yeah.
They don't think about us the way they love their dogs or their cats. They think about us as, oh no, here's that bill, and how's the insurance company? The insurance company's charging me too much, right?
Yeah.
Especially in this market, right?
Hmm.
What do you think how do insurers find that right balance, right? There's table stakes in digitization, but how does insurers think about that personalization uh, as well as that digitization? Because the efficiencies as they digitize are much better, right?
Right.
What do you think is there a right balance? And then you could even include AI in that, right? As you
Yeah.
said.
Yeah, there is a right balance. And obviously, there are some kinds of experiences that, we're all keen to have straight through processing, right? Hands free, touchless, all that sort of thing, and it's classic, as, in the example you brought up earlier, roadside assistance services, or, glass claims. But if there's
Mhm.
something, going back to the point I made, the airbags deployed, there's a bodily injury, someone is hurt, there's a third party involved in the claim, then I want to talk to somebody. So it's a lot of honestly, Bill, is giving people the choice
Yep.
about what that preference might be, even for that, as I said, the Gen Zs who want to, find an agent on a mobile device. And so that's obviously going to mean, in those situations, that Gen Zs probably also want to understand, what kind of digital capabilities you have that I can, check out my policy or file a claim or something like that, if they're smart. But yeah,
Yep.
those are, it's all about giving customers choice. And some of that personalization, we think about it kind of tongue in cheek, but match.com between the consumer and the agent, right? Help
Yep.
you use digital to actually predict which agency is going to be most successful in supporting this customer. So
It's interesting as we think about distribution, right? Uh, you mentioned it earlier. We have this historic hard market, especially in the
Yeah,
personal lines business, right? So the overall underwriting performance over the last couple of years in personal lines is down, right? It's just
yeah.
not what it was. Yet the insurtech movement, all of us, thought we were doing everything to improve it. I guess, and I think there's been a lot of great improvements, across the industry and claims adjudications, lots of things.
Yeah.
What do you think went wrong in the insurtech movement, sort of insurtech 1.0, that may have contributed to this historic loss ratio?
Well, I think kind of goes back to two things. First, tech people that thought they could do something in the business of insurance, right? I mean, you remember back in 2014, Google, we're going to sell car insurance and all that sort of thing. Another set your hair on fire experience or situation in the insurance industry. And then 2 years later, it's a lot harder than we thought. And so I think that's a lot of what it is this the allure of insurance. We love this. Look at how much, no wonder Warren Buffett loves this float, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
And then it's like, oh my gosh, this is hard. This
yeah,
is harder than we thought.
yeah,
So I think misunderstanding, from a tech perspective, the business of insurance, it could be a total tech play, and it's not. And then
yeah,
the second thing, is kind of going back to we thought, we're going to replace the agents. I think InsurTech 2.0, it's going to be, again, a real synthesis of digital and the role of the humans in the journey of insurance.
yeah. And then it's all about, how the products are distributed, right?
Yeah.
Of course, affinity marketing's close to our heart. And as a matter of fact, Ellen, you've been a speaker at PIMA before, and PIMA is a leader in sort of alternative affinity sponsored distribution. It's been around for years, and then there's a lot of pivoting that's been called embedded now. Where do you think affinity distribution is going? I mean, you've got a good sense of it. You followed it. What do you think the future is for affinity distribution?
I think there's a strong future. And of course, I'm very close to Denise Garth, who I know has done a lot of
Yeah,
work also with Pima. And it's a conversation that we have, frequently when we, get to meet. But, I don't think affinity is going anywhere. If anything, it's going to be strengthened in times of uncertainty. Right. The relationships that we have with, interest groups and organizations that kind of support our careers and our businesses and that sort of thing. We ask questions in our consumer surveys every year, Bill, on in terms of the role of affinity in research and purchase for both consumers and small businesses. And, especially for small business, it's really important,
yeah,
right? Businesses like me. And this is an organization that knows what we need, how we work, all of those kinds of things. But even for consumers, especially for life insurance,
yeah,
we see an over-indexing on life insurance, in the affinity market for consumers researching and purchasing through those channels.
yeah. And how do you think about affinity, traditional affinity, or how do you think about embedded? I mean, I know everyone's talking about embedded insurance, and I think a lot of insurtechs thought that it would solve, we would just pivot from a direct to consumer model to an embedded model, and the more complex the product, the harder it is to embed, right? So what are your
Right.
thoughts on embedded distribution as it?
Yeah, we had a prediction about that for 2024. And, I just recently published a case study about one of the auto OEMs moving into embedded for commercial auto and small business. I think it will be, it'll be pushing a rock up a hill for some of them, to be honest with you. It's, again, it's a return to automotive selling, just like the old Allstate days, where they sold in dealers and holy cow, Allstate even, built cars.
Yeah,
So, I think it seems like a quick fix, but there's relationships, there's finding the right distribution partners for embedded. That's going to be the really important decision. Plus, on top of that, you got to have a licensed agent on the other end,
yeah,
right? So it's one thing to think about, yeah, I could, and this is, I'm just making this up, this is not happening, but just assume we can go buy home insurance at Pottery Barn. That means Pottery Barn is going to have smart people and licensed agents in the stores. Probably not going to happen. So the whole licensing thing is like a really big challenge for in the embedded market. You either
That's
strike partnerships with Pi like Ford Motor did, or you find a really good partner with licensed agents and all the right technical and digital chops, to support that embedded channel. That's really important.
Yeah, and it's sort of like affinity marketing with APIs, but the
Yeah.
more complex the product,
Yep.
the harder it is, right? I think you've covered in the past some. I mean, true embedded is really point of sale. It's a
Yeah.
checkbox, right? When you book a flight, it's a checkbox. When you enroll in a lease for your apartment, you can check off your renters. But when you're talking about, to your point, a much more complex sale at that Pottery Barn example, would be very
Right.
difficult, right? For that retail person to say, "Hey, would you like home insurance with this new couch?" Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm going to do curtains and insurance. Yeah, exactly.
I've got another question for you. When you think about the future of non-insurance brands in the insurance business and adjacencies, meaning adjacencies like mortgage companies or car dealers or financial institutions or
Mhm.
fintechs, sort of the new affinity groups. What do you think the probability of success might be for a virtual agency that's bolted on to one of those adjacencies? I mean, how do you think about that?
Well, to be honest with you, Bill, I think the idea of these digital, bolt-on agencies to these, adjacencies, frankly, going to be critical. Think about the idea of applying for a mortgage and at that mortgage purchase experience or application experience, and you could also get your insurance coverage. Um, so the problem is obviously someone who knows how to take a mortgage application and kind of walk through that process isn't necessarily the same person who's going to be able to give you the highs and lows about which insurance carrier is going to be the best for you and why you need this coverage beside the fact that you need to provide a binder at closing. So I think the idea of having people who are licensed, who understand insurance, who understand what the right time in the process that you're going to need this, and is going to be really an important element in terms of making these adjacencies successful when we think about what's going on in the embedded market.
Yep, yep. And just to that end, as when you think about talent in the insurance industry, right? Do you think the insurtech movement and the digitization and all the neat kind of cutting edge stuff that's happening in our industry right now, do you think that's good for recruitment and attracting new talent to the industry?
Oh gosh, Bill, holy cow. You should take a look at some of those Indeed job postings for prompt engineers for, Gen AI. You know, even insurance companies are wait for it paying prompt engineers $300,000. So
Wow.
if you've got kids that are STEM kids, make sure they are looking at Gen AI, and as opposed to just pure computer science. So those are the kinds of things that we're seeing, Bill, is that, um, and interestingly, the insurance industry, I think, has moved very quickly around Gen AI, and it's hard to believe that we could say that in the same breath,
Wow.
but they've embraced it with caution, though. They're thinking, this is going to be a great way for us to serve customers, help us scale up our kind of gray hair workforce, things like that. But they've moved very quickly. Not much customer facing yet. A lot of it's what to help humans. Those are the kinds of use cases that we're seeing for Gen AI. Data summarization, here, let's roll up, the whole claim, all the interactions that we've had with adjusters and examiners and SIU and, third parties and lawyers and all that kind of stuff in a one, simple view of the claim that, claims professionals for an insurance organization to very quickly see what's going on. And what does that mean? They can spend more time with their claimants, helping
Yep.
them resolve all this. Yeah.
So when a young person comes to you, Ellen, and says they look at your career and said, wow, she's made an impact. She's highly respected. She's smart. She knows the industry, and just asks for your advice. I'm thinking about going into the insurance industry. What do you tell her?
Oh, I would tell them this is it's a lovely work-life balance, to be honest with you. Second, you're helping people. There's a social good associated with this. You're going to learn a lot about data. You're going to learn a lot about, modeling, and so I mean, you can totally tech geek out and data geek out in this industry. There's so many paths that you could take, either on the science side, down to, relationships with people. So
Yep.
it's a rich opportunity for anybody thinking about the business.
I may send my sons to you for some advice.
Oh yes.
um, anything else you'd like to share, that you think the listeners would want to hear about the industry or about Forrester that you'd like to share before we
Yeah, well,
conclude?
I think one of the things that has been very interesting, Bill, I, had talked about, the level of interest that we had seen from insurance carriers around all things distribution and marketing and lead generation and sales last year. One of the other interesting things is that we've seen the foot off the gas on straight through processing.
Hmm.
Right? Everything a couple of years ago was 95% of our claims, they're all going to be straight through process. Boy, that's not going on right now. It's, I think a bigger recognition of, it's a more nuanced decision that we need to make as insurance organizations. We want to touch that customer. So, don't miss those opportunities to, develop a relationship, because that's what this business is. So that's has stood out big from the last what we saw 2 years ago.
That's really interesting, and this is a relationship business. Well, Ellen, it's been a real pleasure having you on, and if the listeners haven't seen you speak or haven't read your stuff, they really should. You are, the best in the industry, so it's a real privilege for us to have you on the show, and thank you for taking the time today.
Oh, pleasure, Bill. Thank you.